The Arizona sun painted the painted valley in hues of orange, pink, and purple as Nora Redpath walked along the fence line of her ranch. Dust swirled around her worn leather boots, and the scent of sagebrush hung heavy in the air. Her ranch house, a simple but sturdy structure built by her grandfather, stood nestled against the backdrop of towering red rocks. This land was more than just property. It was her home, her history, her heart. Nora paused, watching a hawk circle lazily overhead. She knew every inch of this valley, every hidden spring, every ancient trail. Her late husband, Thomas, had taught her to read the land, to listen to its whispers. And her Apache grandmother had passed down skills of survival and self-reliance, knowledge that ran deep in her blood. Life on the ranch was peaceful, a rhythm of sunrise and sunset, of tending to the cattle and mending fences. Nora rose early each day, the cool morning air filling her lungs as she saddled her horse, a chestnut mare named Rusty. Together, they would ride out to check on the herd, ensuring they had enough water and grazing land. She spent her afternoons tending to her small garden, where she grew vegetables and herbs. The evenings were for reading, for sitting on the porch and watching the stars bloom in the vast desert sky. Sometimes, she would play her grandmother's flute, the mournful notes echoing through the valley, a song of remembrance and connection. But beneath the surface of this tranquil existence lay a hidden strength, a quiet determination forged in hardship and loss. Nora was more than just a rancher. She was a survivor. She could ride, rope, and shoot with the best of them. And she possessed a skill that few knew about, a mastery of Apache knife fighting, a legacy passed down through generations of her family. It was a skill she hoped never to use, but one she was ready to defend her home with, if necessary. A skill that was now becoming very necessary. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the valley, Nora felt a sense of unease. The wind seemed to carry a warning, a whisper of change. She knew, deep in her heart, that the peace she had cherished for so long was about to be disturbed. The hawk's circling was not just lazy. It was watching, waiting, as was she. The next morning, the sound of an unfamiliar engine shattered the valley's quiet. Nora watched from her porch as a convoy of black SUVs rumbled down the dirt road, kicking up clouds of dust. They stopped just short of her property line, and a group of men emerged, their polished shoes and crisp suits a stark contrast to the rugged landscape. Leading the group was a tall, imposing man with a sharp, clean-shaven face. This was Victor Blackwell, CEO of Sunfire Resources. He adjusted his tie and surveyed the ranch with a cold, calculating gaze. Two men flanked him, burly and intimidating, while two others carried briefcases, their faces grim. Blackwell strode confidently towards the ranch house, his boots crunching on the gravel. Nora met him at the edge of the porch, her expression calm but unwavering. Rusty whinnied softly from the nearby corral, sensing the tension in the air. "Mrs. Redpath," Blackwell said, his voice smooth and practiced. "I'm Victor Blackwell, and these are my associates from Sunfire Resources. We're here to discuss the possibility of acquiring your ranch." Nora nodded slowly. "I know who you are, Mr. Blackwell. I've heard about Sunfire Resources." Blackwell smiled thinly. "I'm sure you have. We're a very successful company. We believe your land has significant potential for resource extraction." He gestured expansively. "Think of the possibilities, Mrs. Redpath. We can offer you a very generous price, enough to set you up comfortably for the rest of your life. You could travel the world, live in luxury." Nora remained silent, her eyes fixed on Blackwell's. She had already anticipated this visit, already steeled herself for this moment. She knew what Sunfire Resources was after, the valuable minerals hidden beneath her land. They didn't care about her history, her heritage, or the delicate balance of the ecosystem. They only saw profit. "I appreciate your offer, Mr. Blackwell," Nora said, her voice firm. "But my ranch is not for sale." Blackwell's smile faltered slightly. "Mrs. Redpath, I urge you to reconsider. We are prepared to make a very substantial offer. You wouldn't want to miss out on this opportunity. He opened his briefcase, revealing a thick stack of papers. Here are the details of our proposal. Take a look. I think you'll find it very appealing. He held out the papers, but Nora didn't reach for them. I don't need to see your proposal, Mr. Blackwell. My answer is still the same. This land is not for sale. It's been in my family for generations, and I intend to keep it that way. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves of the cottonwood trees near the creek. The hawk called out overhead. Nora stood firm, a solitary figure against the backdrop of her beloved ranch, ready to defend it against any threat. Blackwell's face hardened, his smooth demeanor cracking. Mrs. Redpath, you're making a mistake. This land is valuable, far more valuable than you realize. We have the resources to make your life very difficult if you choose to stand in our way. Nora met his gaze unflinchingly. Are you threatening me, Mr. Blackwell? I'm simply stating a fact, he replied, his voice regaining its composure. We have legal avenues to pursue this acquisition. We could tie you up in court for years. Is that what you want? This land has been in my family for generations, Nora repeated, her voice unwavering. My ancestors are buried here. Their spirits are here. I will not dishonor their memory by selling it to you. Blackwell sighed, as if dealing with a stubborn child. Sentimentality is a luxury you can't afford, Mrs. Redpath. Think about your future. Think about the money. Nora shook her head. Money can't buy what I already have, Mr. Blackwell. I have my land, my heritage, my peace of mind. One of Blackwell's burly associates stepped forward, his hand resting on his belt. Maybe you need to think harder, old woman. Things can get unpleasant. Nora's eyes narrowed. We'll leave for now, but this isn't over. We'll be back. He turned and strode back to his SUV, his associates following close behind. The convoy rumbled back down the dirt road, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake. Nora watched them go, her hand resting on the handle of the knife she always carried beneath her skirt. The valley was quiet once more, but the peace had been shattered. Nora knew that Blackwell's threat was not an empty one. He would be back, and he would use every means at his disposal to get her land. She had to be ready. She had to prepare for a fight. The hawk soared overhead, its keen eyes watching, waiting, and Nora knew she would be watching, waiting, and preparing as well. True to Blackwell's word, the pressure began subtly at first. A few days later, Nora discovered that her well had been contaminated with oil, likely poured in during the night. It wasn't enough to cause lasting damage, but it was a clear message. She spent a full day cleaning it, hauling buckets of water and scrubbing the stone lining, her hands raw and aching. Then, some of her cattle strayed, the fences inexplicably cut in several places. It took her hours to round them up, pushing them back through the broken wire, mending the damage as best she could with what she had on hand. Each incident, small on its own, added to the growing sense of unease. One evening, as she sat on her porch, she heard the sound of gunfire in the distance. It was brief, just a few shots, but it was enough to send a chill down her spine. She grabbed her rifle and scanned the horizon, but saw nothing. It was likely just a warning, a reminder of Blackwell's power. The most disturbing incident involved her late husband's grave. She found the headstone overturned, the ground disturbed. It was a deeply personal violation, a deliberate attempt to wound her. She spent hours writing the headstone, carefully smoothing the earth, her heart heavy with grief and anger. These acts of intimidation were designed to break her spirit, to force her to give in and sell her land. But they had the opposite effect. Each act of aggression only strengthened her resolve. She would not be bullied. She would not be intimidated. She would protect her home, no matter the cost. Nora knew that Blackwell was testing her, probing her defenses, trying to find her breaking point. She refused to give him the satisfaction. She remained calm and resolute, showing no sign of fear or weakness. She started sleeping with her rifle by her side and kept a close watch on her property, patrolling the fence line at night, listening for any unusual sounds. She reinforced the doors and windows of her house and set up tripwires around the perimeter, rigged with empty cans to alert her to any intruders. She also began to reconnect with her Apache heritage, spending hours studying her grandmother's journals, relearning the ancient skills of survival and combat. She practiced her knife fighting, honing her reflexes and sharpening her senses. She knew that she was facing a powerful enemy, but she was not without resources. She had her land, her heritage, and her unwavering determination, and she was ready to fight for what was rightfully hers. The quiet strength that was always inside of her was starting to come to the surface, showing the world that she was not to be taken lightly. The Apache knife fighting techniques came back to her as naturally as breathing. Her grandmother, a woman as tough as the desert itself, had started teaching her when she was just a girl. She remembered the feel of the smooth wooden handle in her hand, the weight of the steel blade, the precise movements required for each strike. Now, in the fading light of the Arizona evenings, Nora practiced. She set up targets, old wooden posts, discarded barrels, and moved through the routines, her body flowing with a grace and power that belied her age. She learned to use the terrain to her advantage, to blend into the shadows, to strike quickly and decisively. She remembered her grandmother's words. The knife is an extension of your spirit, Nora. It is a tool of protection, not aggression. Use it wisely, and only when necessary. Nora also spent time studying the land, identifying natural choke points, hidden pathways, and areas where she could create obstacles for any intruders. She knew every gully, every rock formation, every patch of thorny brush. She used this knowledge to her advantage, creating a network of defenses that would make it difficult for anyone to approach her ranch undetected. She set traps, not lethal ones, but enough to slow down and disorient anyone who tried to sneak on her property. She dug pits and camouflaged them with branches and leaves. She strung wires across pathways, connecting them to noisemakers that would alert her to any movement. She also learned to read the signs of the desert, the tracks of animals, the direction of the wind, the changing patterns of the stars. She became attuned to the subtle rhythms of the land, sensing any disturbance, any intrusion. One night, as she patrolled the fence line, she heard the sound of approaching footsteps. She melted into the shadows, her knife drawn, her senses on high alert. She watched as two men, silhouetted against the moonlight, crept towards her house. They were carrying tools, likely intending to sabotage her equipment or damage her property. Nora waited until they were close enough, then she sprang into action. She moved with lightning speed, her knife flashing in the moonlight. She disarmed one of the men with a swift, precise strike, sending his tool clattering to the ground. The other man turned to face her, his eyes wide with surprise and fear. Nora held her knife steady, her voice low and menacing. "Get off my land," she said, "and don't come back." The men didn't hesitate. They turned and fled, disappearing into the darkness. Nora watched them go, her heart pounding. She had sent a clear message. She was not an easy target. She was ready to defend her home, and she would not back down. The training from her Apache grandmother was proving to be invaluable. Word of the encounter with the two intruders spread quickly through the small community. The local sheriff, a man named Ben Carter, arrived at Nora's ranch the next morning, his face etched with concern. "Nora," he said, "I heard about what happened last night. Are you all right?" Nora nodded. "I'm fine, Ben. I took care of it." "I know you can handle yourself, Nora," Ben said, "but this is getting out of hand. Blackwell's got deep pockets, and he's not afraid to use them. I'm worried about you." "I appreciate your concern, Ben," Nora said, "but I'm not going anywhere. This is my home, and I'm going to defend it." "I understand that, Nora," Ben said, "but I need you to cooperate with me. I need you to report any incidents to my office, and I need you to promise me that you won't take the law into your own hands." Nora hesitated. She knew that Ben was trying to help, but she also knew that the law could be slow and ineffective. She had to protect herself, and she couldn't rely solely on the authorities. "I'll do what I can, Ben," she said, "but I have to protect my property. If Blackwell's men come back, I'm going to defend myself." Ben sighed. "I know, Nora. Just be careful." As Ben drove away, Nora couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much worse. She knew that Blackwell wouldn't give up easily. He would continue to pressure her, to intimidate her, to try to force her to sell her land. She decided to take her defenses to the next level. She contacted a friend of her late husband, a grizzled old rancher named Jed, who had a reputation for being a skilled marksman and a master of wilderness survival. "Jed," she said, "I need your help. Blackwell's trying to run me off my land, and I need someone to help me protect it." Jed didn't hesitate. "I'm with you, Nora," he said. "Blackwell's a bully, and he needs to be stopped. I'll be there tomorrow." With Jed's help, Nora fortified her ranch, setting up additional defenses, improving her security, and preparing for a siege if necessary. They reinforced the fences, set up additional tripwires, and created a network of observation posts. Jed also taught Nora some advanced shooting techniques, showing her how to use cover and concealment, how to shoot accurately at long range, and how to defend herself in close quarters. As they worked together, Nora felt a sense of hope. She was not alone. She had friends and allies who were willing to stand by her side, and she was ready to fight for her home, for her heritage, and for her future. She would not let Blackwell win. She would not be defeated. She would stand her ground, no matter what the cost. The land would be safe, one way or another. A week later, Blackwell returned, but this time he wasn't alone. He brought with him a team of surveyors and a contingent of armed security guards. They arrived in a convoy of trucks and began setting up equipment on the edge of Nora's property, ignoring the no trespassing signs that she and Jed had posted. Nora and Jed watched from the porch, their faces grim. They knew that Blackwell was escalating the conflict, trying to provoke her into a confrontation. "What do we do, Jed?" Nora asked. "We stand our ground," Jed replied. "We don't let them intimidate us." Nora grabbed her rifle and walked towards the property line, Jed following close behind. Blackwell met them at the fence, his face smug. "Mrs. Redpath," he said, "I'm here to conduct a survey of your property. I have a court order authorizing me to do so." He waved a piece of paper in the air. Nora didn't flinch. "That court order is worthless," she said. "This is my land, and you have no right to be here." "I'm afraid you're mistaken, Mrs. Redpath," Blackwell said. "The court has ruled in my favor. If you try to interfere with my survey, I'll have you arrested." "Try it," Nora said, her voice low and menacing. Blackwell's security guards stepped forward, their hands resting on their weapons. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Suddenly, a siren wailed in the distance. Sheriff Ben Carter arrived, his patrol car kicking up dust as he sped down the road. He jumped out of the car, his hand on his gun. "What's going on here?" Ben demanded. "Sheriff," Blackwell said, "I have a court order authorizing me to conduct a survey of this property. Mrs. Redpath is interfering with my work." Ben looked at Nora, his expression troubled. "Nora, is this true?" Nora nodded. "He's trespassing on my land, Ben. He has no right to be here." Ben sighed. "I'm sorry, Nora, but I have to uphold the law. If Mr. Blackwell has a valid court order, I can't stop him from conducting his survey." Nora felt a surge of anger and frustration. She knew that Blackwell had manipulated the legal system, using his wealth and power to get what he wanted. She was trapped, caught between the law and her own determination to protect her home. The law was not always just. "So you're going to stand there and let him steal my land?" Nora asked, her voice laced with bitterness. "I'm just trying to keep the peace, Nora," Ben said. "I don't want anyone to get hurt." "Well, you're not doing a very good job of it," Nora retorted. Blackwell smirked. "I suggest you cooperate, Mrs. Redpath," he said. "It will be much easier for everyone involved." Nora glared at Blackwell, her hand tightening on her rifle. She knew that she couldn't win this fight with guns. She had to find another way to protect her land. Her mind raced, searching for a solution. She looked at the surveyors, at the security guards at Blackwell, and then she looked at the land, at the hills, the gullies, the canyons, and the hidden pathways that she knew so well. An idea began to form in her mind. She might not be able to beat them with force, but she could outsmart them. The land was her ally. "All right, Mr. Blackwell," Nora said, her voice calm despite the turmoil within. "You can conduct your survey, but you're going to do it my way." Blackwell raised an eyebrow. "In what way is that, Mrs. Redpath?" "You and your men are going to follow me," Nora said. "I know this land better than anyone, and I'm going to make sure you don't damage anything or disturb any of the wildlife." Blackwell hesitated. He didn't like the idea of being led around by Nora, but he didn't see any other option. The sheriff was there, watching, and he couldn't risk a confrontation. "Very well," Blackwell said, "but I expect you to cooperate." Nora smiled thinly. "I always cooperate," she said. "Just follow me." Nora led the surveyors and the security guards on a winding, treacherous route through the hills and canyons of her ranch. She took them through thorny brush, across rocky terrain, and over steep inclines. She knew every shortcut, every hidden pathway, every obstacle. The surveyors, dressed in their crisp shirts and polished shoes, struggled to keep up. They stumbled and sweated, their faces red with exertion. The security guards, weighed down by their weapons and equipment, fared even worse. Blackwell, determined to maintain his composure, tried to keep pace with Nora, but he was clearly uncomfortable. He wiped his brow with a handkerchief and glared at Nora, his frustration growing with each step. As they ventured deeper into the ranch, Nora began to subtly sabotage the survey. She pointed out rare plants that the surveyors had to avoid, forcing them to detour around them. She led them through areas where the compasses malfunctioned, throwing off their readings. She accidentally kicked over survey markers, forcing them to start over. The surveyors became increasingly agitated, their work slow and inefficient. Blackwell's frustration boiled over. "Mrs. Redpath," he said, his voice tight with anger, "this is ridiculous. You're deliberately trying to obstruct my survey." "I'm simply showing you the beauty of my land, Mr. Blackwell," Nora said, her eyes twinkling. "I want you to appreciate what you're trying to take away from me." Blackwell sputtered with rage, but he couldn't argue. The sheriff was watching, and he couldn't afford to lose his temper. As the sun began to set, Nora led the surveyors back towards the ranch house, their faces exhausted and defeated. They had barely surveyed a fraction of the property, and their data was riddled with errors. Blackwell knew that he had been outmaneuvered. Nora had used her knowledge of the land to her advantage, turning his survey into a frustrating and unproductive exercise. He glared at Nora, his eyes filled with hatred. "This isn't over, Mrs. Redpath," he said. "I'll be back." "I know you will, Mr. Blackwell," Nora said, her voice calm and confident. "But next time, I'll be ready for you." The sun set on the horizon, painting the sky with a fiery determination. The land was silent, and Nora was ready. Blackwell did return, sooner than Nora expected. He arrived the next day, not with surveyors, but with heavy equipment, bulldozers and excavators, ready to begin clearing the land for resource extraction. Sheriff Ben Carter was with them, looking weary and resigned. "Nora," Ben said, "Blackwell has a permit. He's within his legal rights to begin construction." Nora's heart sank. She knew that Blackwell had been working behind the scenes, pulling strings, using his influence to bypass the local regulations. She was running out of options. She stood in front of the bulldozers, her arms crossed, her face set with determination. Jed stood beside her, his rifle in hand. The security guards surrounded them, their weapons drawn. "You're not going to do this," Nora said, her voice ringing with defiance. "I won't let you destroy my home." "I'm afraid you don't have a choice, Mrs. Redpath," Blackwell said, his voice cold and hard. "I have a permit, and I intend to use it." He gave a signal, and the bulldozers roared to life, their engines spewing smoke and noise. They began to move forward, their blades scraping against the earth. Nora knew that she couldn't stop them with force. She had to find another way, a way to demonstrate her resolve, to show Blackwell that she was not to be trifled with. She turned to one of the security guards, a young man with a nervous expression. He was holding a rifle, his finger on the trigger. "Son," Nora said, her voice calm and steady. "Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to be a part of this destruction?" The young man hesitated, his eyes flickering with doubt. "I'm just doing my job, ma'am," he said. "I understand that," Nora said, but sometimes we have to choose between doing our job and doing what's right. She took a step closer to him, her eyes locking with his. She moved with lightning speed, her hand flashing out. Before the young man could react, she disarmed him, snatching the rifle from his grasp. The entire scene unfolded in a matter of seconds, a blur of motion and skill. The other security guards gasped, their hands tightening on their weapons. Blackwell stared in disbelief. Nora held the rifle aloft, her eyes blazing with determination. She didn't point the rifle at anyone. She didn't threaten anyone. She simply held it, a symbol of her defiance, a demonstration of her strength. "I don't want to hurt anyone," Nora said, her voice ringing across the valley. "I just want to protect my home, but I will not stand by and watch you destroy it." The bulldozers idled, their engines sputtering. The security guard hesitated, unsure of what to do. Blackwell's face was a mask of fury. Nora had made her point. She had shown them that she was not afraid, that she was willing to fight for what she believed in. She had revealed her true strength, her unwavering resolve, her Apache spirit. The silence hung heavy in the air. Sheriff Ben Carter stepped forward, his face a mixture of concern and respect. He knew that Nora had crossed a line, but he also understood her desperation. "Blackwell," Ben said, "I think it's time we talked." Blackwell hesitated, his eyes still fixed on Nora. He saw the determination in her eyes, the unwavering strength that radiated from her. He realized that he had underestimated her. "Very well, Sheriff," Blackwell said, his voice tight with anger. "Let's talk." Ben led Blackwell and Nora to the porch of the ranch house, away from the bulldozers and the security guards. Jed remained by Nora's side, his rifle still in hand. "Nora," Ben said, "I know you're upset, but you can't keep doing this. You're going to get yourself into serious trouble." "What choice do I have, Ben?" Nora retorted. "He's trying to steal my land. He's trying to destroy my home." "I understand that, Nora," Ben said, "but there has to be a better way. We can't solve this with violence." "Then what do you suggest, Ben?" Nora asked. "Do you think he's going to listen to reason?" Ben turned to Blackwell. "Mr. Blackwell," he said, "I think it's time you reconsidered your approach. This situation is escalating, and it's not going to end well for anyone." Blackwell sighed. "I'm simply trying to exercise my legal rights, Sheriff," he said. "I have a permit, and I intend to use it." "But what cost, Mr. Blackwell?" Ben asked. "Is it worth all this trouble? Is it worth risking lives?" Blackwell hesitated. He had come this far, invested so much time and money in this project. He didn't want to back down, but he also didn't want to risk a violent confrontation. Nora spoke, her voice calm and steady. "Mr. Blackwell," she said, "I know you want my land for its resources, but I also know that this land is more valuable than you realize. It's not just about the minerals beneath the surface. It's about the water, the wildlife, the ecosystem. It's about the history, the heritage, the spirit of this place." She paused, her eyes locking with Blackwell's. "I'm willing to negotiate," she said. "I'm willing to consider a compromise, but I will not sell my land outright. I will not let you destroy it." Blackwell studied Nora's face, his expression thoughtful. He saw the sincerity in her eyes, the deep connection that she had to this land. He realized that she was not simply being stubborn. She was fighting for something that was truly important to her. "What kind of compromise are you proposing, Mrs. Redpath?" Blackwell asked. Nora smiled faintly. "I have some ideas," she said. "Let's talk." The three of them sat down on the porch, and the negotiation began. The sun beat down on the painted valley. A breeze swept through. The world waited. The bulldozers sat silent. The negotiation lasted for hours, the details shifting and changing as the sun moved across the sky. Nora, with Jed's quiet support and Ben's mediating presence, held firm to her core principles. She would not sell the land, and she would not allow it to be destroyed. Blackwell, initially resistant, gradually began to see the wisdom of her position. He realized that a protracted legal battle would be costly and time-consuming, and that Nora was not going to back down, no matter the pressure. He also began to appreciate the value of the land beyond its mineral resources. Finally, As dusk began to settle over the Painted Valley, they reached an agreement. Blackwell's company, Sunfire Resources, would agree to withdraw its plans for resource extraction on Nora's ranch. In return, Nora would grant Sunfire Resources a limited easement to conduct exploratory drilling on a small, designated portion of her property, subject to strict environmental safeguards and ongoing monitoring. Furthermore, Sunfire Resources would invest in a community development fund for the Painted Valley, supporting local schools, infrastructure, and conservation efforts. The agreement also included a clause stipulating that Sunfire Resources would respect and protect the cultural heritage of the land, consulting with local Apache tribes on any future projects. Blackwell shook Nora's hand, a grudging respect in his eyes. "You drove a hard bargain, Mrs. Redpath," he said. "I was protecting what's mine, Mr. Blackwell," Nora replied, her voice firm but fair. "And what belongs to future generations." Sheriff Ben Carter smiled, relief washing over his face. "I think this is a good outcome for everyone," he said. As Blackwell and his team packed up their equipment and prepared to leave, Nora felt a sense of exhaustion, but also a profound sense of satisfaction. She had faced down a powerful corporation, stood her ground against intimidation and threats, and secured the future of her land. She had drawn on her ancestral training, her knowledge of the terrain, and her unwavering determination to protect what was rightfully hers. She had demonstrated the resilience of her spirit, the power of her lineage, and the importance of standing up for what you believe in. The bulldozers rumbled away, disappearing over the horizon. The valley was quiet once more, the peace restored. Nora watched them go, her heart filled with gratitude and hope. She had won. Her land was safe. The land would flourish. The agreement would protect the land. She had done it. The next morning, Nora stood on her porch, watching the sunrise paint the Painted Valley in vibrant colors. The air was crisp and clean, the scent of sagebrush filling her lungs. She looked out over her land, at the rolling hills, the towering red rocks, the winding creek. It was all still there, protected, preserved. Jed joined her on the porch, a cup of coffee in his hand. "You did good, Nora," he said. "You stood up for what you believed in, and you won." Nora smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you, Jed," she said. "Thank you for standing by me." "Anytime, Nora," Jed said. "This land is worth fighting for." Nora spent the day tending to her ranch, mending fences, checking on her cattle, and working in her garden. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, a deeper connection to the land. She knew that she had a responsibility to protect it, to care for it, to ensure that it would thrive for generations to come. She also spent time reflecting on her Apache heritage, on the lessons that her grandmother had taught her. She realized that her strength came not just from her knife-fighting skills, but from her deep understanding of the land, from her unwavering respect for nature, and from her commitment to protecting what was sacred. As the sun began to set, Nora sat on her porch and played her grandmother's flute, the mournful notes echoing through the valley. She played a song of remembrance, a song of gratitude, and a song of hope. She knew that the future was uncertain, that there would always be challenges and obstacles to overcome. But she also knew that she was not alone. She had her land, her heritage, her friends, and her unwavering spirit. She looked up at the stars, twinkling in the vast desert sky. She felt a sense of peace, a sense of belonging. She was Nora Redpath, a widow, a rancher, an Apache knife fighter, a protector of the land. And she was home. This was her identity, and she was secure in it. She would continue to live her life in harmony with nature, caring for the land, respecting its rhythms, and defending it against any threat. She would be both a peaceful caretaker and a fierce protector, a guardian of the Painted Valley. The land would be safe. The future would be bright. The hope would be strong. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying a message of peace and renewal. The hawk soared overhead, its keen eyes watching, waiting, and Nora knew that she would be watching, waiting, and protecting for as long as she lived.